In this video, we're going to talk about adding layers from the web. So we saw that we had a lot of layers available to us in Portal. So we went to add layers and search. We could find weather, ARC assets, a lot of other things already in the system for us. But sometimes we need to go outside of Portal, find data on the web, and bring it into our map. So I'm just going to go up to the top and create a new map, and it's going to give me that pop-up again. Are you sure you want to open a new map? So I hit yes. I could go back if I wanted to and save any of my changes just to be safe. So I have my new map of the United States, or I'm sorry, the world. So underneath the video, there's a little link to this page here. This is the National Weather Service's GIS page. And we're going to use actually a lot of data from here for the rest of the class. But the first link that we have here is for web services. So web services are how we add data from the web. If I click on that, it actually gives a few different areas here. We can look at current weather. So we can actually pull in the radar, watch worn polygons if we wanted to. We can actually do forecasts. So these are always very helpful when we're working with hurricane season. Here in Florida, we want to get current forecasts for what tropical storms and things might be doing. We can actually get that data, bring it into our maps. It'll automatically update. So that's always really helpful information. One that I want to look at down here is underwater. They actually have river gauge data throughout the entire country. So that's actually pretty interesting and useful information. So let's just take a look at what that is. So I click on the river gauges and I get this, and it doesn't look very helpful, but if you're ever navigating for map information on the web and you get a page that looks like this, you're in luck, because it probably means we're able to bring this into our mapping portal. So one thing to kind of keep in mind up here at the top, this is a secured page, and you can tell that in Chrome, one, it says secure and has a little padlock. And then we can look at the beginning of our web address, and it's HTTPS, so it's encrypted. So you'll only be able to bring in web data into Portal if it is encrypted. So sometimes you will find web or map servers on the internet, and you want to pull the data in, but unless it's encrypted, we won't be able to bring it into RCView. So if I scroll throughout this page, it will give me a little description. It actually has forecasted river stages up to 336 hours. If I go down here, there's actually a list of those forecasts. So I can look at the observed. I can go out into the future. So these are actually layers inside of this web service. So there's a couple ways I could bring this into the map. Right now, I could just go up to the top. I could copy this entire URL. If I go back to Portal, add layer from web, and it will actually ask me if it's an ArcGIS server, if it's all these other things. If you just paste it in, it'll actually figure out what the correct option is, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So hit add layer. All right, and now we can see that the entire United States is covered with river gauges, right? So that would be an opportunity for us to maybe change that scale-dependent rendering. That's that visibility range. So maybe I don't want that to come in until I go to somewhere around the city level or so. So if I start zooming in, again, I'm in Florida, so I'm just going to kind of look at that region. So maybe this is the range where I want those gauges to pop up. All right, so that's a little less cluttered here. And then again, if I zoom out, those go away. So I'm coming back in. So right now I actually have a list of all of the layers here. So right now I'm looking at the observed. I could change that to be a forecast. So right now there's not really anything going on in the state weather-wise. So there's not a lot of forecasting going on. I could always flip over to my legend, which will let me know what the symbols mean here. So there's no flooding or flooding undefined. If I switched and did my forecast and I turned off the observed, again, those dots are just kind of gray because there's no forecasted flooding or anything in the rivers here. So I brought that in, but it brought in a lot of layers. And so maybe one thing when you're thinking about making a map for a consumer is that you want to make it as easy for them as possible. You don't want to bring in 15 layers and kind of have them decide which they should turn on and off. And actually, this name of this layer is not incredibly helpful, so I might even want to rename that river gauges. But right now, I'm just going to remove this layer altogether, because one thing I wanted to show with this web service here is, let's say I just want to show 48-hour forecast. So I could click on that, and if I copy that link and add it, now I actually just get the 48-hour forecast. And I could go through and I could just like copy the current, and then I could copy the 48-hour. You know, you start thinking about what actually do you need for your map. It's going to help increase the performance of the map. It's going to help make it easier for the end user to kind of decide what they want to turn on and off inside of a map. So again, I can do all those options that I had earlier. I can go in and I could actually set the visibility range. I could rename this. If I had multiple layers, I can move it up and down. There's actually a few new options that came in on this. We're going to talk about the pop-ups later in the styling section here. I have create labels. So inside of the layer, there's actually a little information about each gauge. So it has like an ID, it has a status, it has all this stuff here. So what if I just wanted the status to come through on these? So again, as we looked at earlier, there were no forecasted flooding in the state. So all these say no forecast, which again is based off of the legend here. So if there was one that had minor flooding or major flooding, the little label here would actually indicate that. So that's actually kind of a useful thing with some layers that have this feature here. Again, we could set the refresh interval. We could go through the description and see how often it refreshes, and we could refresh it a little bit more if we wanted to. I'm just going to turn these labels off, keep it less cluttered. Also on the layer, there's a little attribute table. I didn't really show that earlier, but I could actually go in here and look at each of these points and find all the information that could be in a pop-up. We have the location, the flood stage, all this information kind of pops in here automatically. One down at the very bottom, we didn't have this earlier, is a save layer. So I've imported this layer. I could actually save this, and that would allow other people to search and find this layer. So they wouldn't actually need to go out to the National Weather Service and search for this. If I save this in the system, I can save it in a folder. And then when we get to the end of the class and we talk about sharing, we can look at how to share this with other people. But that is something to kind of keep in mind as well. This map already started with the topographic base map. So if we're thinking about flooding, maybe it's something we want to kind of look at the topography of the surrounding area. But if we didn't have that turned on by default, we could always go up to the top and select a different base map. Maybe we want a terrain base map instead. Florida doesn't have a very varied geography, so there's not too much there. But just keep in mind that depending on what you're trying to tell with the map, changing the base map might help as well. So we could actually go through here and we could actually find a lot of useful information. Some of it, as I said, is already inside of Portal. So if you can find it in Portal, I would just use it directly out of there. But if not, just know that you can go out onto the web and grab a lot of really great resources, especially from things like the National Weather Service, Census Bureau, FEMA has a lot of really great resources outside. All right, so stick around for the next video.